no man control. Sound on. A revolution with the breath of my lungs. Sound on. Sound on.
Hey, what's up, everybody? We are live Taking the World TV. Tonight, we have a super special show for you tonight. We're going to be talking with Luke Geraty. We're going to be going from rapper to theologian. But, guys, we're going to bring in our host for tonight, hailing from Canada, the man that would go to the moon in a nanosecond, Johnny Rocket. What's up, Johnny? How you doing tonight?
Man, I tell you what, I was in a car accident like a couple months ago. And so I just got cupped. Do you know what cupping is? Where they put it on your body and it supposedly brings blood to you. I look like I got in a fight with an octopus.
Oh, nice. Let's see it. Let's take it off in the show.
No, trust me. You don't want to see it.
Yeah. Well, coming in, also from Canada.
Represent.
When he's not losing money at crypto, you can find him celebrating truth and telling Johnny why you can't go to the moon in a nanosecond. Robbie Davidson.
That's right, man. I'm excited for the show. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. And the man that's been blocked more times than anybody on Facebook, love him or hate him, is Doug Kirshner. What's up, Doug?
Wait, why would I have been blocked more than Robbie?
No, people block you. See what I'm saying? People block you.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. No, Robbie's been banned more. Yeah, but people,
You're hating me. That's all right.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for our special guest tonight, Luke Geraty, from rapper to theologian. Wow. How's it going tonight, Luke? How's it going?
It's fantastic. Thank you for having me on this wonderful show that I just learned about a week ago.
All right. Hey, we're just getting started.
I'm going to binge. I'm going to be binging episodes.
Hey.
Oh, we go through it all. That's for sure.
I will tell you, all you guys, if you guys go and watch Luke shows, they're super polished. He does some amazing stuff. We're going to talk about what he does through his podcast and his channel. Everything's super clean. Everything's super nice. He has doctors on. He's got, he normally goes by Apostle Luke Geraty. So he's like, this dude's super legit when it comes down
That's recent, just to be clear. Okay. I self-titled myself Apostle recently, just to be very clear.
All right. Well, those are the ones that I've been binging. He does an amazing job at those. So what's up tonight, everybody? How you guys doing?
Hey, it's been a long few weeks since our last show. I feel like I aged another 30 years.
Yeah.
You look good, Doug. What are you talking about? It looks like you've been working out.
I do.
How do I want to
preemptively block Doug. How do I block him on Facebook? I just want to start that right now.
Just preemptively.
Who do I do?
Yeah, he's automatically blocked on every account. You have to unblock him. Facebook.
Hey, I don't know. Just we're talking about hip hop and stuff. Anyone watch Hope from NF? Speaking of some hip hop, anyone catch the video? You never caught it yet? Oh my goodness, dude! You got to check it out.
I only watch Christian rappers.
What'd you say? Did you say I don't like Christian rappers?
He's just teasing. He watched it, man. He watched it.
I only watch Christian rappers.
He ran home to watch it. I had to tell him about it. I'm like, dude, it literally released today. You got to check out the video. It's crazy. So
now, Luke, do you even know who NF is?
I have heard a couple NF songs. A couple of my kids were enjoying that. I think Nashville rapper, and I can't say I've listened to a lot of his music. Yeah,
his videos are pretty
actually, yeah. And I will say, one of my friends, Jeremiah Carlson, who is he's a part of, he was at one time a part of the denomination I'm a part of, sung on one of his songs. So he kind of turned me on to him. That was probably like 10 years ago or something like that. So yeah, he's dope. I like him. Good.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get this started. So Luke, have you always been a believer? How'd you come to faith?
Yeah, so I would say I grew up in a Christian home. Mom and dad made me go to church. Actually, my dad didn't become a Christian until I was about 10. So my mom kind of forced me into it with my dad's support because he was a smart husband, and basically grew up in church. And then I think my faith kind of became more like personal and real when I was about 16. started to, have a lot more interest in Jesus and the Bible. And then I think I struggled through, my faith for the next probably 6 to 7 years. But yeah, I've been, mostly knowing about Jesus and doing the church thing for my whole life. So I kind of jokingly describe that as being a good reason to do a lot of therapy, because I was in church for most of my life, and I have a relationship with the church, like a lot of people. Sometimes I love it, sometimes it drives me crazy. But I am currently, I have 2 goals in life. I want to end my life loving Jesus, and I want to end my life loving the church. So,
did you grow up in the vineyard church, or was that later in life?
No, yeah, my mom became a believer in a Church of Christ that was real super conservative, non-musical instrument. Some of you may have be familiar with them. But yeah, we kind of stumbled into the vineyard when I was a kid. So I've been in the vineyard for, I don't know, 30 something years, probably like that. And then obviously have checked out other churches, over the years. And when I was in grad school and seminary, studied a lot of different traditions. And so I consider myself fairly ecumenical in that I can appreciate a variety of different church traditions without, fully embracing all of them.
It seems that they were so far ahead, like when it came to the arts or music in general. Just there was so much music that came out of Vineyard. Now you're seeing like almost every church, has music coming out. But it took a long time for a lot of churches to kind of get to that level. Vineyard was kind of pioneering it way back in all different genres.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's kind of what people know the Vineyard from, is music. I meet people from all over different traditions that are like, oh yeah, we used to sing Vineyard songs. I kind of think, I think in some ways, like the way that Elevation or Bethel functions now, that's kind of how the Vineyard used to function back in the 80s and 90s. So yeah.
So I got to know Brian Durkison. He's out of BC. And he did a lot of stuff through Vineyard and stuff. So got to know him when I was going to college there. But just, even just in those atmospheres, even when Delirious, and I'm sure you remember Delirious, the band, they were doing a tour, but they would be doing tours at like Vineyard churches.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, Brian was, one of the originals. He's OG. He really is. Guy.
Yeah. Cool.
Did you were your parents a byproduct of that Jesus revelation movement, of that Jesus movement?
No, I mean, I think I'd say a byproduct, just historically, they definitely, my mom and dad didn't have like church backgrounds. I think my mom had grown up at, just a non-Christian home. I think her parents had probably been connected to a Lutheran church at one time, but she didn't grow up and going to church. And then I think I was probably like 2 or 3. I think she went to a Bible study, got invited to a Bible study, came to faith. My dad, a number of years later. But, situating that experience in light of it, I'd say it probably would be fruit of the Jesus people, just kind of what God was doing all throughout the 60s, late 60s, 70s. It was the early 80s when it happened. So she actually connected with the charismatic movement mid 80s, which would definitely be a byproduct of the Jesus people movement. So yeah, I definitely would say we probably would trace our lineage to fruit from that. I don't think it was necessarily known or intentional at the time, but hindsight's 2020. Looking back, you can definitely see the connections.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's super popular now due to the movie, all these things coming out, right?
Yes, it's the highest grossing for Lionsgate. I just saw a thing on the box numbers or whatever, and they said it's the highest grossing film now for Lionsgate, I guess.
Wow. Really?
Since 2019 or something like that. They said, yeah.
I was going to say,
since 2021 is the highest grossing.
Since 2019. Yeah, since 2019. But I did see something pop up just today about it, and they were just saying,
that's cool.
It's doing very well.
I saw it. I didn't hate it. I was mildly surprised that I didn't hate it. So.
I think that's the view of a lot of people that are used to watching Christian movies and going, wait, this one actually had good actors.
Yeah.
Good storyline. But, I grew up with all that stuff. So I'm just like, I was wondering how, I've met Chuck Smith, and I'm trying to figure out how Kelsey Grammer, was going to portray Chuck Smith.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's a very interesting.
Kelsey's super genuine too. Like that's a really cool story. But like Rob Skiba had time to actually go one-on-one with Kelsey Grammer. A lot of people don't know this story, and I won't go into all the details. But like he was fascinated learning from the Bible from Rob. Rob was actually in his house. They were actually driven there, and it just came alive for Kelsey in about 2018. So everything that you're seeing right now, those genuine emotions and just the way he is now, in those interviews, that's 100% genuine. That's not an actor. He's literally completely wanting to change his life, which I find fascinating because, it's just wild that like Rob Skiba, someone that, we all know that passed away a couple of years ago. He was able to like really minister to Elsie and ask them a lot of questions and stuff. So it was just kind of cool because he wasn't at the time, he was asking a lot of questions about the Bible. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, watching some of the interviews with Kelsey and even his portrayal, you could tell that it's genuine.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the movie yet. So
how can you call yourself a Christian? How can you even claim the title of Christ without having supported that Christian?
I would imagine that I've probably seen more Christian movies than everyone combined on this panel. Trust me. I've watched a lot.
I am so sorry for that. I feel like you should be.
Hey, they are getting better though. They are getting better. You know what? It's like I look at it, I compare it like music. Music started off, but music really advanced. It really got to the point where it was on par with secular music. Now, the movie industry, however, it definitely took a long time to get close to even on par. I'd say it's still not there, but it's starting to get close. Like it's starting to get up there.
Budgets seem to matter in film. For sure.
But they were. You just kind of watch them and you'd be like, okay, I'll dismiss all the bad acting, I'll dismiss all the bad effects, but I'll just go with the storyline. But I like to do it more just for support. To tell you the truth, that was my biggest thing. It's just I wanted to support it because if you don't support it, it dies, it goes away. So you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, he's wearing his Nicolas Cage Left Behind T-shirt right now, so you can't see it.
I've been wanting to reference Left Behind for the last 3 minutes. So
we can get into eschatology too, but hey,
let's do it.
So okay, so Luke, so you were like I think you're pretty much like me and Doug. We were raised believers. Johnny and Robbie, they came a little bit later, but here you are. So Doug's in the music industry. You're out California. I presume you're San Diego area at this time of your life, right?
No, like my hip hop foray story is kind of interesting. So I really got into hip hop when I was living in Colorado. My family had lived in Denver, the Denver area, in a suburb, and I was going to school in this at this private school that was it had all the kids that had gotten kicked out of their high schools and junior highs. So I had a combination of some gang affiliated folks, but just playing basketball a lot, kind of started getting more and more into hip hop. And, I think just started messing around, freestyling, battling, things like that. And so by the time we were living in the Midwest, I met some folks from Syntax Records, who actually they became Syntax Records, but Sackcloth Fashion was a group. There's a rapper named Mr. True was his rap name, and then he went by Maximus Onesimus later on. But I met them at a open mic type of thing, and we just started talking and connecting. And then eventually the opportunity to move to San Diego came, so I packed up my car and drove from the Midwest to San Diego. Lived out there for almost a year, and I recorded the first Sackcloth album, and that's kind of what got me out on the West Coast.
This is what year?
That'd be like, I want to say 99.
Okay.
Yeah, 98, 99, somewhere around there. It was kind of at I don't know, I'd say in some ways it was kind of the heyday of the underground hip hop, thing. I mean, I think LPG had been out for a while, so there were the Tunnel Rats. Cross Movement had just come out kind of recently before that, like maybe a year or two before that, and we're starting to get pretty big traction. I would consider this is, I don't know if this is a big debate anymore, but their style of hip hop was a little bit more like churchy and not bad by any means, but it was a little bit different than what I was doing and what I think a lot of the Syntax artists were doing at the time. But so lived in San Diego for about a year, and it was about late 90s. Yeah, we recorded the Sackcloth album, went on tour, came back. Moved.
Was the Sackcloth album on Syntax or was it on Rescue?
It was both. If I remember correctly, I was just a rapper. Be very clear here. Okay. I just did raps. But yeah, like I think it was a relationship or partnership with Rescue Records for distribution purposes. That's how I remember it. And so I think we were distributed by Diamante Distribution because I think Rescue was the kind of the connection to that. And so yeah, Syntax, and I don't remember all the albums at the time, but like Red Cloud, had kind of entered into the scene around then. Dirt was obviously around, and Sackcloth was pretty cool with Dirt, at the time. And yeah, there was just a lot of really good. I mean, I would say at that time, like the hip hop in the Christian scene was becoming like I could listen to it, because prior to that, there was not very much Christian rap that I found myself enjoying.
Well, what was your top five? Hold on, before you do that, what was your top five mainstream?
At the time?
Yeah. What was
well, I mean, I've always been a sucker for Wu-Tang. So Wu-Tang always. Pharaoh Monch from Organized Confusion's always been. I've always loved Chino XL. I like The Last Emperor a lot too. It's funny. The Last Emperor didn't have any albums out, and I think he's put out an album since then. But like he was just on every mixtape. The Fugees, fantastic. Razkaz. Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time with top fives because I just like that era. There were so many good. The golden age, man. All of them are better than what is out now.
So it was really in that introduction to the guys in Sackcloth that got you into Christian hip hop. Would you say that's fair?
Well, no, I mean, like I think, yeah, like getting out there. But I had been doing shows and stuff like at different like Christian festivals out in the Midwest. Because I was pretty involved in like the underground scene in the Midwest. I did a lot of stuff like in Minneapolis and St. Paul and played some different festivals. I will say I liked Grits a lot. Grits' first album I thought was very, very cool because it was so different. It was like that Southern East hip hop, East Coast hip hop, thing. It was just so different. And I saw them and Notaverbs before Notaverbs was like Notaverbs. He was like backup dancer to Grits. And we like hung out at this festival that I think I did the opening for them. And we just like kicked it for a little bit and talked and Notaverbs, like we just freestyled. And I was like, dude, Notaverbs is dope. So I had I had done a lot of, Christian stuff, but I had no, I was as underground as they get, and that was like before any of the internet stuff. But there was a website, I think it was called like God's House or God's Zone. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but that's where like everybody on the internet originally connected. And there was like this chat. And so it's kind of funny now, but we used to like get on there and, chat freestyle or chat style, free chat style, write raps. And that's actually how a lot of us met originally, from the underground hip hop scene.
Were you part of that? Were you around when I think it was like Crewvention? I believe that's what it was called. Were you?
So I never went to Crewvention, but this is around that time when they were all connecting. Because I think God's House or God's Zone, whatever I think it was God's House, and then there was like the Hip Hop Zone or something like that. But those websites were, like kind of the forefront in the scene doing, Christian hip hop stuff. And yeah, Crewvention was a pretty big event. I never
one in Atlanta, right?
I think it started out in Florida, if I remember correctly. It was like Orlando or Tampa. Because I remember LPG and what was the other? There was this other group. I want to say the Remnant Militia, maybe, if that name sounds familiar.
Yes.
And they were there was like all these battles and Lady J was another lady I remember hearing about but I think at that time though, like I still felt like half of the Christian hip hop that was out there was kind of not the stuff I would listen to. LA Symphony, I liked LA Symphony a lot. Pigeon John and B Twice, I was always a fan of them. They were doing something very unique. They were like definitely West Coast vibe, but not biting anybody. It just felt like it was hard to, listen to a lot of Christian hip hop that didn't just sound like a Christian version of Eminem or Wu-Tang Clan.
He's taking shots at KJ. That's what he's doing.
I may be.
Yes.
I may be talking about people who dye their hair blonde and then try to rap like him. Go from Wu-Tang Clan to Eminem. Might be saying that, but
how can you go from Sons of Intellect to doing KJ52? I just don't.
I just never got it, but cool.
I'm gonna make it so KJ never comes on this show. You do realize that, right?
Well, I have a long history of being a hater of his music,
so me and you have that in common, but I have a long history of him hating me. So that's a.
Well, I can join you in that one as well. So, yeah. But I mean,
I want to have him on to talk about conspiracies. Apparently, he hates conspiracies, like all conspiracies. Like, don't bring him up; he gets so angry. So I think it'd be fun to have a conspiracy.
He gets angry about everything.
Yeah. No, but he gets really like really upset if you bring up any type of conspiratorial type stuff.
Like he's actually trying to be Eminem.
Shots fired! Where's the hype button?
Hey, I was saying this.
Poor Joe.
Look, right. Our dear friend George Moss, who is on tour with Toby Mac right now in the Toby Mac band, was KJ's hype man. So
you get him on then.
We will. We can. We will. I mean, George is going to come on. He's going to be sharing, how he went and be filled in for Diverse City. I mean, he's on tour right now with Diverse City, so it's kind of crazy. But
I will say this though. As I've matured over the years, I still am not a fan of his music. I don't see myself ever being a fan of his music, but I do think though that he played a role, and I can accept that a lot of people found it helpful in the youth group world, and that's cool. That was just not me. And
you got to look at it though, like he was one of the rappers that were out there that white kids could listen to.
Totally.
And right, like
yeah, no, I mean, I think that that was my mom. My mom, like there was certain music that I was allowed to listen to, and then there was the music that I actually listened to,
Right.
And I remember I got caught with some tape from, I don't know who it was, Public Enemy or something, probably when I was like 12 or 11, and she went and took me to the Christian bookstore. And she bought ETW, End Times Warriors. I don't know if you guys remember them. We're going to stomp on the devil's head. Yep. We're going to heal the sick. We're going to raise the dead. Yep. We're going to laugh, ha ha, in the devil's face. We cast out demons in Jesus' name. But when I heard that, I just was like, all right, this isn't terrible.
They're cool, man. I didn't mind them at all.
Yeah, you got to remember the times in Christian music, though.
Yeah, totally.
But you came up at a time where I think Christian hip hop was at its zenith. In my opinion, I mean, you came up with groups like Remnant Militia. You came up with Sons of Intellect. You had Plato's one of his 50 side groups.
Ilharmonics. I mean, Ilharmonics was on that
photogenetic composition, though.
The cut, phonetic composition. Yeah, I was actually on that album. I just was reminded recently.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Ilharmonics was on. They were on MTV's The Cut. I don't know if you remember that. And they actually, I think they won their round, or they did. I mean, they did pretty well. And
they won it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Plato was an insanely talented MC for sure, and a good producer too.
I mean, I remember being at GMA in, I want to say it was 2000, and there were so many underground hip hop rap artists that you're like, who are all these cats? I mean, the only guys at that time that were getting any kind of play was T-Bone and Cross Movement. Yeah. And that was about it. And to hear groups that were coming out of California the way that they were through Rescue or through Syntax, it was unheard of, because it was more of the street style of the Wu-Tang, of De La Soul style kind of hip hop. And you're like, wait a minute, when did this start? I mean, Marzil was, I think, by all accounts, one of my favorite hip hop groups that ever came out, and they were amazing at that time. I think they got worse when they signed a goatee, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like Mars Hill was the first album that I was like, okay, this is as good as any underground, socially conscious backpacker rap out there, which was the stuff I listened to. You know,
Right.
I was, and even, I mean, it's, yeah, like the Goatee album was not my favorite album they did, but Breathe Slow, super dope song. And live, that song just killed live.
And I'd like to see anybody go up against Manchild or Plato.
Yeah, I think as an MC battle, Red Cloud would serve all of them, though. I will just go on record as saying that. Red Cloud is the best freestyle MC I've ever heard. He would eat all of them. He would eat all of us. For like, I'm not hating at all. Plato's amazing. Manchild's dope. Red Cloud is on another level as a battle MC. It's like, he's like, you ever hear of ADM? ADM did an album through Syntax too. And he won, I think he won Scribble Jam 3 times and they retired him. Okay. ADM, next level. Like Red Cloud and ADM they're just on different, they're just freaks of nature, bro.
Are you still friends with him?
I haven't talked to ADM for a long time. I mean, 10 years. But he was, we used to talk quite a bit, and super cool dude. Very, very interesting dude. I connected him when I was I became friends with Mood Swing 9 from Anacon, which was, you know, like kind of the West Coast backpacker independent hip hop group of that time era. But Mood Swing 9, who was a producer, and he did a couple songs, or at least one song on Atmosphere's Lucy Ford EP, which at that time was like, you know, the you know, one of the most popular artists out there at the time. Slugs, I think it was Nothing But Sunshine was a song he did, but he became a Christian, and Mood Swing 9 and I got connected, and we started just talking, and then he had connected me with ADM, and he connected, I think Syntax eventually connected with ADM that way too. But yeah, Red Cloud and ADM, I mean, like, there's just no way, you know, their freestyling is better than most people's written raps. Yeah. It's like, that's why I quit. I couldn't keep up. It's just impossible. Why try?
So at this point, you know, you're you know, we take it back. You're just getting involved. So the first Sackcloth Fashion record drops. You're not even an official member, are you?
I was an official member. Okay. Why?
Well, not from We've Just Begun. You weren't there. Yeah. You weren't there.
No.
Okay, I was correct, right?
You were. I was family. Okay. At that, on the EP. I was still living in the Midwest though. But yeah, on the Something for Everyone to Hate album, it was myself and Steve Trudeau, or Mr. True, or then Maximus and Isthmus, who we were the two MCs along with all the other guest MCs we had. And then Sir Rock Domes or Rock or whatever I don't know what their new names are, but he did all the production alongside musical instruments from some people that they knew. That then I think for the next album they all became a band, and it became more, I think that's kind of what. Yeah, so I was on that album. It was more of a hip hop. I'd say it's more of a hip hop album, and their second album kind of was branching towards a little bit more diversity. Yeah, musically, which was cool. It just wasn't really what that's kind of, you know, the transition I made outside of Sackcloth was just, it wasn't going the direction that I necessarily felt like I wanted to be in. And I mean, that's not a bad thing at all. I just was like, I'm not a singer. I think Black Eyed Peas are cool, but I'm not trying to make Black Eyed Peas music, you know, not in a bad way at all. I just was like, I was more into the I guess the more backpacker, underground rap world. That was kind of where I was at.
So you weren't even on The Lone Flower, I don't think, right?
Nope. Yeah. No, just I toured with them when they were doing, we were promoting that album.
Okay. Yeah. So Johnny and Robbie, they never really got to taste, you know, that Sackcloth record, or even Fashion Expo. I mean, I'm telling these guys,
was it the distribution? Like, I'm just kind of curious. Is it the distribution? Because I mean, like, you're talking about Tunnel Rats or LPG, or you're talking about these other artists. Of course, we had them up here in Canada, distribution. But these other artists, did they just not have a distribution deal with like anything outside of America?
I don't. That's a good question. I have no idea. I mean, I really don't know any of the.
Do you know, Johnny? Stuff. Like, what was the deal with like that end of that?
A lot of it was all underground, and they weren't doing any signings, and so there was no distribution for Canada. But
that makes sense.
There was I mean, the problem was unless it was going through the two different avenues for Canada, it wasn't coming up here.
So they would have basically been on like a 7-ball, like somebody signed these guys type of
something,
scenario.
or
I know Sackcloth had a song. I think we had Pulling a Fast one of our like our bigger songs on the first album that was on a 7-ball compilation. The 7-ball was the magazine, wasn't it? Like a Christian magazine or something. Yeah.
7-ball was, yeah.
Yeah.
You got the pre-CD, and you could be a sampling of all these different like bands. It was great. I loved it. I just bought the CD.
Yeah, I know we had one song on one of their maybe more, but I do remember Pulling a Fast one was on.
Yeah, I love that somebody signed these guys. It'd be like the two at the bottom, like be all these songs, and it would be like somebody signed these guys. It would be like, hey, these guys need to. There's something here, right? So it was a great way to discover new artists for sure.
Yeah. I think by the time I was kind of like working out and kind of transitioning out of music, it was like that's when a lot of this distribution was kind of taking off, and kind of my story was like right when I had just put out my album, and it was like a year and a half later I transitioned out of music, which was kind of stupid.
And you wanted to just go full into like theology? Is that kind of where your aim was?
Well, it's kind of weird. I mean, I don't think I've even actually told this story. It's kind of funny.
Oh, we got lots of time, so
apparently. Let's hear it. So, like, I was on tour, and we did the Something for Everyone to Hate album, Sackcloth Fashion. We toured off of it. I came back, and like living in San Diego was just not a reality financially anymore. And I had been staying with Steve, Mr. True, the other MC, and there was just no way there was no financial way to stay there and do music full time. So I had kind of thought about going back to school. So I decided to go back to school. But while I was going back to school, it was primarily just as a continuing my education, but I'm still doing music full time type of thing. So I was doing that, and I was living in Minneapolis, which at the time had an amazing hip hop scene. The Rhyme Sayers, were just blowing up, and there was a huge scene at the time, and still is, I'm sure. But so I recorded my album, or I did an EP first through Sackcloth or through Syntax, and then I did an album and was touring off of the album, and then I got put on the Extreme Days tour, which at the time was all these, big Christian name groups. And so while I was on the Extreme Days tour and about to like go full time for the year, just doing that, because I think they had booked like 9 months of dates. I totally had this like, the only way I can explain it is I felt like the Holy Spirit spoke to me and told me that I was supposed to transition out of that and start working at like doing ministry stuff in the church, which was exact opposite direction that I had planned on ever. Because at that time I was like, I still had some pretty deep seated, like I despised the church in many ways, because I found the church really frustrating, full of hypocrites, super judgmental, annoying, not very good at being, not very good at being missional at the time, contextualization of the gospel, things like that. And so it was like a complete shock to the system, so to speak. But my wife and I, and we had one daughter, our first daughter at the time, who was like 1. We basically were like, okay, so we are going to get off the Extreme Days tour. We're not going to do that. But I want to say I had like 8 or 9 spot dates that I had to do. So we were driving through Colorado and Utah and just doing all these different dates that I had filled, and then got done with that, moved back to the Midwest. And that was it. That was the end.
I'm going to raise my hand like it's school. So let me ask you this then. Do you find that it was a weird dichotomy for you in that you're a Christian rapper, but having issues with doing church?
No, no more so than I'm a pastor now, and I've got issues oftentimes with the church.
Sure.
I just think that like having a relationship with the church is, I think it should be challenging for us given the dynamics of American Christianity. I'm sure it's similar in Canada. I think just Western Christianity in general has, a lot of things that it lacks. But I kind of came to the point where I was like, okay, first of all, I've loved studying theology and philosophy, and just anything with biblical theology since I was like 16, 17. I've always been fascinated by that. I've always read a lot. So I also, part of the transition was to go back, finish my undergrad and go to grad school and just keep studying theology because I wanted to make a difference in the church. And I felt like, hey, maybe this is something I can do. And so that's what I've given the last 20 something years to, is trying to, do it differently than a lot. There's a lot of great churches out there. So I don't want to by any means say that the majority of the church sucks or most churches are terrible.
What did you think was lacking though overall? Now, again, obviously there's different denominations. There's, different points for each one. But overall, what were you seeing that you were like, you know what, I want to make a change here. I see this really lacking.
Yeah. Well, so in the traditions that I'm a part of, I would classify it as charismatic evangelical. So charismatic churches oftentimes have a significant amount of anti-intellectualism in their ethos. So, there's this like kind of a low bar for theological reflection, which means that there's not a lot of great theology in some of the practices. And a lot of the nonsense we see in some of the practices within charismatic churches would be significantly reduced if people thought a little bit about whether or not statements like the reason why people aren't healed is because they have sin or not enough faith. Is that an actually sustainable position? Is that taught in scripture? And then I think also too, just seeing how there's a lot of churches out there outside of the charismatic tradition that I think are open to the Holy Spirit, but they have not had a real robust, helpful, maybe explanation of a biblical theology of the Spirit, or seeing how to do charismatic practices without being a weirdo, because I think charismatic churches, oftentimes it's like, there's this vibe where it's like, be weird for the sake of being weird. And I don't think that that's necessarily.
Well, there's some extreme examples, like where people see, and then they'll kind of just say, hey, they all must be crazy like that, whether they're barking and rolling on the ground. And, we've seen all these things happen. Toronto Blessings, you had the different movements, and then charismatic or whatever will get kind of, branded under that. And obviously it's disingenuous because, I mean, even within a conservative church, there'll be many branches within them. So, it's hard to do that. But again, I think the key thing though is even with all your frustrations and things you were upset, you stuck with the church. And I think that's a really core message, because too many people are like, you know what? Nah, I don't like the church. And they just walk away from it. And it's like, it's such a, it's a horrible thing. I see it all the time. Based on people just getting upset, well, find another church then. It's like, they can't all be bad. And even if there is some blemishes.
That's kind of the problem with the church though, is in some ways, I think churches haven't done a good job of creating space for people to be able to help, I don't know, not change, transform it, or, I mean, that's the sad thing, is that there's a lot of churches out there that have locked down their circles of influence or leadership to where it's like, there's not a whole lot you can do to bring reformation or,
so then why wouldn't you start your own? Like, why wouldn't you start your own right at that point? Because I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if there's a certain church that falls under, that brand, they're going to not want to deviate from what they've been, historically. So, I mean, it makes more sense to start something new. I mean, this is where a lot of the denominations.
That's probably why there's 7 million different. It's probably partly why. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I mean, everybody kind of has to figure out how they can be. I mean, a key question for me at that time, and because it was a real big, like transitioning out of music after having done it, like full time, for 6-7 years was a pretty big, because it's like I kind of gave up right when it was like things were taking off. It made no sense.
No sense.
But I really firmly believe that one of the key questions that we should constantly be asking ourselves is, what is Jesus inviting me to do right now, or how can I be obedient to God right now in this moment? And starting with the first thing, and so that's one of the things I think people have to wrestle with in relation to church. I definitely do not think that the solution is to not be involved in a church community. The caveat though is that a church community does not have to have a building. Doesn't have to have a sign on it. I mean, you know, the church is a community of people. So, you know, there's just, I don't know. I feel like that's part of what I've wanted to spend more time doing is just, you know, helping educate people a little bit more about biblical theology and amongst other things too. I mean, I've actually grown into like, I love doing pastoral care for people and, you know, being present in people's like worst situations when they've lost someone they loved or they're going through something really challenging. You know, that stuff is actually I'm now enjoying it more. You know, now, obviously not the stuff they have to go through. That's tough and challenging, but it's definitely a space for the Spirit to work. And I counted an honor to be able to do some of that stuff.
And you're still in California now?
Yeah. So I guess you know, so like, I don't know how much hip hop stuff you wanted to talk about. We got done with the hip hop thing.
Well, Robbie's you're into pastoral now. We've moved past.
We can flip back. We can flip back and forth because
Hold on. Old Luke, Old Luke was like, we didn't really introduce Old Luke to the people out here because they're all like, I wonder what this guy sounded like. But you know what? We didn't even introduce Luke. You know
I
what?
sounded a lot like Cannabis and LL Cool J combined.
So here we go. Hold on. Luke's gonna just introduce himself.
This is terrible.
Go ahead, Luke. Take it away.
I'm gonna what?
Luke is my name. Syntax is the label that I rep and I claim. So actions speak loud, but my words speak louder. My life took on meaning when I got the soul power. I seen a few things here, there, and in between. I had the good and the bad here in all of my dreams.
So there you go.
I wasn't sure. Am I supposed to hype myself up? Like,
yeah. Well, that was old Luke. He introduced himself. He said, "Hello, everybody." I mean, when that first came out, though, that track. I mean, I'm listening to it. You got Pigeon, you got Red Cloud on the track, and then Luke comes in, and I'm just like, it wasn't like a back seat to Pigeon or Red Cloud. So you knew right there, there were just bars. It was hot. It was amazing. And that was the album. That was that final album that you kind of like. I mean, there's so many good songs on that album, and you were gone. It was over like pretty quickly. Like,
I do have some songs on Bandcamp that are also very old, but newer than that album.
Really?
Yeah, I did a couple. So I think it's like lukegerity.bandcamp.com. Okay. I had started recording more of an EP. So it's all battle rap stuff, you know, battle rap nonsense, hippity
Luke,
hoppity
you gotta
hop.
get back into it.
It's funny. I have 3 songs, 3 beats from Plato or Crumb, his new rap name or producer name, that are on my desktop that are waiting to be rapped on, that someday I'm going to, when I'm 50, put those hot songs out. So
how long until you're 50?
6 more years. So I got 6 years.
I think you got to, reconnect him with Dirt, get Dirt to do some stuff so he doesn't have to come up with so many bars. And
yeah. Let me do the choruses. I'll do the choruses.
Look, Dirt and I have been looking for somebody. He has an album that he wants to do. Noise was going to be on it, and he recorded a whole bunch of stuff with them, but Noise is Noise and is doing his thing, and Dirt wants to erase Noise off the album.
Ouch!
Find somebody new.
Yeah,
and it's called Serpent Dove, and it's totally
Is Dirt in San Diego still?
Nope, he's in Texas right now, and we're trying to get him to Cleveland.
Okay. Yeah, Dirt. He's just one of the funniest people I've met in San Diego. He's just like the best.
He's actually going to be performing at Audio Feed this year.
Oh, cool. Because I remember he had didn't he have 18 kids or something? He had a lot.
he had 3.
Okay. Well, I remember at the time. See, I had no kids at the time. I have 5 now.
3 sounds like 18 when you have little kids and you're
that's
young.
exactly. Robbie has 18.
But that was like 1999. So he had 3 kids, and
I was just like, oh my gosh, this rapper has so many kids.
We're the same age, so he was around 23, 22, had 3 kids, dreadlocks, tattoos, living in the tenements in San Diego.
Dude, I remember when I went to his house, I would always be like, I'll go there in the daytime Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go in the daytime.
Yeah, dude. It was a.
He's like, the first time I came there, he goes, "Where'd you park?" And I said, out front. He goes, "Oh, you don't want to park there."
Yeah, for sure. It's like, oh, okay. Well, how about I meet you where we're going to be going?
Right.
Can you take the bus?
So before we get into like, because I think we're going to spend a lot of time going into, where you're at right now, the most important things of our faith. I think, discipleship, a lot of these things are so vital, so important. But you came from an era that a lot of us, we see guys that they've walked away from their faith, right? And we were all shocking you before the show. This person's not walking into faith anymore. This person's walked away. How real do you think that time period was of artists? You were around Christian hip hop, probably some rock artists doing some stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
How real do you think the faith was of these young guys just breaking into an industry, maybe because it was easier than mainstream? What's your thoughts on that?
And before you answer that, just how many of these artists, the correlation between growing up in a Christian home or they came to faith like as a teenager? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd love to know that if you kind of know their backstory.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I don't. It's hard to generalize because I mean, there was so many different. Just even in just as we've been talking, I've been remembering like I haven't thought about that MC or that group for 20 years. So I don't know. I mean, I think that I will say part of my journey. This is kind of part of my story too, because it was a pretty significant part of it. But I can't remember if I was. I don't know if I was. I think I was nominated for a Dove, but I don't. Or we were. I feel like there was a song on Sackcloth album that got nominated for a Dove, and of course we lost to some non-hip hop group because that's what happens. And
probably Toby Mac.
Yeah, no,
it was probably Raise because they were winning all the.
I think it was actually Worldwide Message Tribe. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
okay.
It was the same thing, right? Same thing.
Google it or YouTube it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Johnny,
jump in the house of God. Jump in the house of God. Jump.
Anyway, I had all of them.
Yeah, but anyway, so I had this like I knew about the GMAs or the Dove Awards, but I hadn't really ever. It was not ever a thing I would ever consider going to because of that and just all the things I'd heard. But by the time my album had come out, like that became kind of a cool thing for all the underground hip hop groups to go out to because like they started having showcases. And so like different underground labels would rent out these clubs and have, like really good shows. And so I rolled down to Nashville with my friend Motion Plus, William Stearns. Shout out to Motion Plus. I think he's still doing music, but phenomenal MC, super cool dude. And we went down there and we did some shows and I did one of the showcases. And there were all these record execs there. And because at that time I wasn't like in a deal with Syntax to like stay. I could have done, I'd done one album. So I had a couple underground labels talking to me. And while I was there, I'm not going to say any groups' names because I'm not throwing any shade, but I was shocked at how many of the Christian groups that I was like hanging out with were, I virtually no difference from when I did non-Christian. Because I did a lot of, I'd say probably 80% of the shows I did were not in Christian venues, so I was always constantly in Minneapolis doing just underground hip hop shows. And so I was actually quite shocked by that. Now I would not be, but at the time I was like it really messed with me because one thing I will say positively about Sackcloth Fashion and all my interaction with the Trudeaus is that their faith, the entire time I was working with them, it was very real. Like, it was never ever a question about faithfulness to Jesus. And so anyway, that really made an impact on me because I remember at the time I was like, kind of like, I don't know, like worldview, kind of like, whoa, hold on. Do any of these artists who I really looked up to who were a little bit further ahead in the Christian rap game, I guess, to call it that, it was like, man, that's crazy. Like, so do any of these people actually follow Jesus? I just didn't feel like there was a real significant difference. And I think that goes back to, and and even what I'm about to say has to be nuanced a bit, but like there was a difference between like people who were doing like Christian youth group rap, church rap, like Cross Movement or, you know, those type of artists. And then folks like myself, I think, who were trying to, like, we were making underground hip hop and we were Christians, and that like would shape the way that we would, you know, speak and rap. But at the same time, we weren't trying to make like church music, I guess, per se. But then later on, you find out, sadly, that even the church rap people had moral failures, and it's like, it's clearly that was not the sign, you know. And I think that was the kind of the interesting thing when, you know, an ambassador had his moral failure. It was like, oh, okay, so basically, you guys, you know, talked a lot about, you know, your faith and it being so central and so important to always say Jesus in every single song, but when it comes down to it, there's not a lot of difference in practices. And so there were like these things along the way that were definitely, I don't know, they were just kind of, I had to process through that a little bit and work through it because it was just hard to see that. So that's part of my story too, because when that happened in Nashville, I left there like pretty disillusioned with the Christian rap world. And I was like, dude, if anything, I don't want to do anything with the Christian rap world. I went to one record release party that was for all Christians, and there were like go-go dancers there. And I mean, there might as well have been strippers. It was that close. And I just was like, what is going on? And Nashville's like this really weird scene because it's like, you know, it's a lot of Christian music there, but obviously there's a lot of just industry business. It's business. That's what I would say. A lot of it was business. So anyway, as far as like the different artists that are out there, I think each one of them probably has their own story. I'm sure there's a lot of examples of artists who grew up in the church and, you know, like that's just kind of the option, whether it's because of the pressure from their mom and dad or, you know, church. It's hard to undervalue the role of community, no matter what community you're a part of. And so I think that could be a part of it. But one thing that I would say I consistently saw was a lot of artists out there doing their thing that were not connected in a church community, you know, that didn't have like real community, meaning, you know, like the big thing, you know, back then was like accountability. I'm not just talking about community. I'm talking about relationship, you know, like other followers of Jesus who would be, you know, praying for you, and, you know, you'd be doing Bible studies with. It just, that was not a big feature. In fact, I don't remember that ever being a topic of discussion. The only person who I ever had a really awesome conversation with about faith was Joey the Jerk. I love Joey the Jerk. Joey the Jerk, as far as I'm concerned, is the man. He like, I don't know. He was, you know, out of that whole GMA experience, he was like, we had some cool conversations. And that's not to say there's not a lot of other Christian rappers that weren't, you know, following Jesus and authentic. It just wasn't something that I would say was at the forefront of my 5 or 6 years of doing it, you know, pretty full time.
Do you think there's a draw for some that they can go towards something that they're like a big fish in a small pond versus being a small, you know, fish in a big pond? Do you think there's that type of allure there at all for some artists? And also the fact that, like you said, it's kind of their friends, they're in youth group, they're starting this young. It's kind of what they know. Because here's the question: if they're not really solid in their faith, why didn't they go into a secular? Why didn't they go for, you know, become the next Jay-Z? Like, why Christian music if really their faith really wasn't intact at all? It was probably
that might be. I mean, that might be the case for some people. But I also feel like, I mean, when I was 16, we had some friends of mine. We started this little like rap group that we just did all these youth group things for our youth group. It was kind of a joke at the beginning, you know, because like we all liked rap and we all freestyled a little bit. But we were by no means like sold out on fire for Jesus. You know, so I mean, there's probably a combination of that too, where there's people who are struggling through their faith, or, you know, like, I don't know, it's mature. Like the more you grow in your faith, the more you mature, you start to see the incongruency between certain aspects of your life. You know, like the more that you become the more that you realize that Jesus is Lord, and that there's no trespassing signs allowed in your life, the more that you realize that every one of your decisions and every part of your life, every aspect of your life actually is a part of discipleship. But when you're younger, you might not see it at all. You know, you might not see those connections because like Sunday morning is Jesus time and Friday night it's not Jesus time. It's like later on you start to realize, no, Jesus time is 24/7, 365. So I'm sure there's part of that. I personally, I would have a hard time thinking that anybody would have done the Christian rap thing as a choice because it was easier. If anything, that made it a lot harder. Like for me, and especially in the like late 90s and early 2000s, that was like an automatic blemish. In fact, for me, you know, I was like, I had connected with all these underground, like, you know, like, so in Minneapolis at the late 90s, the Rhyme Sayers are blowing up. Def Jux was a real well-known label at the time. So Aesop Rock, LP, and those cats were like coming to Minneapolis and doing shows all the time. And so I had connected with this local DJ promoter that really liked my music. And it was always despite me being a Christian. So like when he would introduce me to other local MCs, he was always like, nah, he's dope. He's a Christian, but he's dope. Like, don't, you know, and it was always like this, like, I don't know, strike against you. And so I think at that time, claiming to be a Christian was almost like, yeah, I would definitely love poverty and I don't want to ever make it. Because there was no money in the Christian rap. I mean, I have literally never made any money on any album sales or anything like that. Like I made money touring. That was the only way you could make money. There was no such thing as like download checks. In fact, I think I got the first time I ever got I got a $300 check from iTunes or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm rich. I'm rich. And it was amazing. And, but like, that was not common. It wasn't until the download era, you know, I think that actually became a thing.
But even downloads, you can't really make a lot. I mean, it's all touring. It's always been about touring for artists. I mean, even with CD sales, it was never about the CD sales themselves. Like, I mean, it's not like you could like live off CD sales. It was off merch. And,
it was always exactly. I mean, exactly.
Concerts.
You make way more money that way.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are artists who were like, I'm gonna, you know, make it easier. But for the most part, I think it was almost the exact opposite. It was almost like you're taking one for the team.
Well, you know, the stats when it comes to like the percentage after college that fall away. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've seen those stats. They're horrific, actually. Like high school graduation, it's horrible. And then college, if they don't get you there, they're going to get you in college, university. Pretty much, it's absolutely devastating when you look at the data that comes back based on, you know, secular education or just life itself, right? So it does make sense if these, you know, everyone's starting young and you know they don't really know, and then all of a sudden they're.
But that's an indication for a failure in two areas. I think number one, it's a failure in you know, quote unquote Christian households or Christian families, and then two, it's like the church has to take some responsibility for that as in regard to preparing people for, you know, for those tough questions. I mean, like most of my life in reality, I don't remember a lot of like when I was growing up, I don't remember a lot of the like the tough, challenging questions. I don't remember sermons or conversations about those things. Like, you know, I mean, the number one question I get in conversations with non-church people who are kind of exploring it and they want to have a conversation with me, they know I'm a pastor, and it's always, you know, it's the age old, how can a loving God allow bad things to happen to good people? You know, and like, I never heard an answer to that question when I was growing up, which is shocking how many people ask me that question, you know, like I would think that somebody would clue in on that being an important one to talk about.
I mean, Luke, that question in itself almost took me out. My daughter died 12 years ago, and you know, we got she's not getting healed because you don't have strong enough faith kind of questions or answers and stuff like that. But the church in itself, and I grew up primarily in an Assembly of God church. And then my parents went off into offshoots of cults, but they never talked about the rainy days. They only talked about the good times and, you know, prosperity and all that kind of jazz. So I think that a lot of guys or kids that grew up in our generation fell away because hard times came and they were never prepared for that.
Yeah. And first of all, I'm so sorry. That's just, you know, terrible. But I think you're right. I mean, my wife is like a 18th generation Assembly of God. She's now Vineyard because she's a Vineyard pastor with me, but she's from a long line of Assembly of God folks. And I did my undergrad in the Assembly of God world. There's a lot of great stuff in the AG world.
Oh yeah.
But I think in classic Pentecostalism and maybe mainline charismatic theology, going back to that, there's just an under-resourced, they're under-resourced with theological reflection. And so, yeah, you have some of those easy responses that you got that are, if you take take time to unpack them, it's like, those are deeply unhelpful and deeply unbiblical. And so I think you're right. There's a lot of people who hear those type of responses, and then, like, I mean, it makes sense to me. Like, I hear people all the time tell me that they left the church, and after they tell me their story, it's like, you know what? I would like to encourage you to give it another chance, but I understand why you, like, I would have done the same thing if I hadn't had maybe an opportunity to study some of the things and read some of the things and have some people in my life to allow me to wrestle with some of those questions. I would probably be in the same boat. So good on you for if you don't mind me, what kept you? I mean, I know the Luke Geraty album, like, just really helped you through that period of your time, of your life. But
I mean, we're talking. So when Chris says people I'm the most blocked man on Facebook, I went through a deep hell. And the only thing that kept me strong, honestly, one of the people was Chris. And I knew what I knew because I studied the Bible, right? And again, they never really talk about, like, John being boiled. They don't talk about Paul being stoned and, Peter being hung upside down on a cross. Those are all, late night bedtime stories for kids that when you want to scare them. But they don't talk about that only because it blocks the idea of, well, we're Christians. We need to be happy all the time. Grace and that all that stuff comes. But I'd have to say that it is only recently that I pretty much started coming back to church. And, like, we're going to a new church, and we hadn't gone to church since COVID happened here in nice Cleveland, Ohio. But I vetted that pastor out, man. He was like, I was asking him questions, and he's like, what? I've never been asked that question. And I'm like, well, maybe you should be. And he goes, maybe I should be. But he had good answers for the stuff. But it's like, if the church does not start actually talking about the suffering end, we're never going to get anywhere, because
for sure.
We just had a wake-up call with COVID, with how quickly the government can shut stuff down, take people out, do what they want to do. And guess what? If you don't understand scripture, or you've never studied scripture, you're never going to live through that. Never. But for me, I'd have to say it was a core group of people that stood behind me and had their hands upon my shoulders, praying for my family, praying for me all the time. I mean, I was in dark times, and Chris would just randomly call me at like 11 o'clock at night while I'm sitting doing a surveillance. And he's like, how you doing? I saw your post on Facebook. It's like, but it just,
that's exactly what I think the challenge with the hip hop scene was back then too, where there just wasn't a lot of that. Because what you just described, because I remember, like, I met one group that had a traveling touring pastor. It was like the weirdest. This is like I remember I was like, that's kind of cool that the record label they were on, it was Goatee Records, by the way. And it was Notaverbs. Notaverbs had like a traveling pastor that was, and I just loved the idea of the label valuing the spiritual, the lives, the discipleship of their artists. Like, that was like really cool. But it's interesting though, because a lot of times those conversations, when you heard like the super churchy rappers talk about it, it was always like accountability, discipline. It was just like, because those traditions tended to be.
But none of them had it.
Yeah, but that's the irony of it. But but even that, it's like, what Chris provided for you, to me, is like, it's relationship, right? And relationship is it's a holistic thing, where it's like, at certain times he might say, hey man, I saw that post. How are you doing? Like, that's the question, is not, hey, you need to take that post down. How dare you?
There are sometimes those.
Yeah, but that's part of it, though. That's my point, is that it's like, it's not just constantly, sin checking everybody, right? It's about providing community relationship, and that's the thing that I think probably for a lot of folks who ended up, leaving the faith or, going out and doing crazy, stupid things, I would venture to guess that a lot of them lacked, really robust, strong community. And that makes sense, because I think that's a byproduct of Western Christianity. You just see it all over the place in the church and every single, aspect of it.
If you ever went to Cornerstone Festival,
I did.
It was just a band of 40,000 misfits.
Yeah.
It was 40,000 misfits trying to fit in somewhere in a subculture of Christianity, but there was never any true accountability. Yeah. And that's why I think here we are in the biggest music desert we've ever been in society, in the Christian music industry, as well as I think even in the secular industry. There's just nothing. And as far as the ministry goes, it was the sheep teaching sheep. There were no shepherds. Mm-hmm. Unless you got into, like, I know POD, they were part of Calvary Chapel. There were people that were behind them. There were people behind certain other artists, but that was few and far between. Like, it was just misfits preaching to misfits.
Yeah. Cornerstone is probably where I actually became a part of Sackcloth Fashion. And it was probably when Steve Trudeau and Tim Trudeau and I were in my car trying to chase down
us Canadians. We just no offense, but like, we hear a lot of Trudeau and we cringe. So
we got in our car and we were trying to chase down MC Hammer to get signed by him. So
couldn't touch him.
I was there that year. Me and Dirt were trying to do that too.
I bet you that's where he met then, because he looked familiar. And actually, do you remember like the hip hop tent? Like we did our set, and then Dirt did a set, and then the one MC who absolutely destroyed Cornerstone was John Rubin.
Which year was that?
Like, I want to say 99 or 98. Yeah, one of those two. But I mean, John Rubin destroyed Cornerstone.
That's when I signed him.
Okay, so I just remember because he had the head nod with the vertical fist. And he just,
his long hair.
Was Manny there too?
Who
was Manny there?
Yeah, Manny was his DJ at the time.
Was Manny his DJ that year?
I'm almost positive.
And Alon was there too.
I don't remember that. What
I remember about the hip hop tent that year. It was I remember Sackcloth, but I remember Dirt and Frost T was there.
Yeah, and I think Dirt came up and freestyled with us. I think we had like a freestyle session.
More than likely.
Yeah.
More than likely.
I tried to crowd surf and it did not work. I just want to go on record as saying that I was held up for 1 second. So
Dirt became a mainstay at Cornerstone. So it was so many years of being at Cornerstone with them. But I think MG, the Visionary, was there.
MG the Visionary was there. Yeah, I loved MG. I just remember the calf. That's Dirt. Old school Dirt. I'm like, why is his whole hand tattooed black? What is going on here? So many memories.
He goes, I made bad decisions back then. I don't know.
That was before, and that's when he had all his fingers too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 2001-ish, 2002-ish is when he lost his finger.
Yeah. Well, Doug, you sent me this so I can show everybody in there. Let me pull that up.
This was the greatest GMA showcase ever.
I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and edit
this.
Do
we want to, before you get to that, Chris, did you want to pause for 1 second?
Yeah, actually, you know what I do? I actually have a different. So we're here at the top of the hour. So you can do one for me, but I'm actually going to do another one because this actually goes with what we were talking about before there.
Because mine actually goes with something that we were talking about before as well.
Exactly. But first and foremost, one of the dear people to take on the World Conference, one of our singers, worship singers, performers, been with us since the beginning, our dear friend, Amber Plaster. She is going through cancer right now. And it's pretty advanced. And so right now, obviously, all the prayers that we can get at this time would be grateful. But if you guys do want to give, some of the treatments that she's doing, they do cost a lot. And so anything, there's that Give Send Go right on the screen. Just givesendgo.com, Amber Plaster. She would be grateful. We would be grateful. If anything, just pray for healing. Pray for their family. All of us, Doug knows them. Robbie, you've known them. So just keep that in mind. And of course, tonight's sponsor, going on a totally different note, which we are doing. So here's this opportunity for those of you who still like to buy.
This is why Luke edits. Why he doesn't do live.
Yes.
Here's the thing.
This is amazing.
We've heard from a lot of great bands tonight, like POD and Grits and Note of Herbs and Play-Doh and even Luke himself. But if you want to pick up an album and you're like, man, I remember CDs. I remember opening them up and smelling the glue and how great that was. Where does one get a CD like that, Chris?
Well, Robbie, why don't you tell him?
You would go to bornagainsounds.com.
Sound.
Bornagainsound.com.
Yeah, born again.
No S.
Wouldn't you just go to eBay and get that?
You won't. You're gonna just pay a lot higher on eBay.
You will get such a good deal, and the assortment, it is absolutely incredible. The assortment.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the funds that are going from there, I heard, are going to be helping Amber. So there you go. So bornagainsound.com.
Does Born Again Sound still have the Remnant Militia?
No, that's sold. So.
You know what's funny? Like, he calls it bornagainsound.com. My first ever website that I developed before I did all my other websites back in 98 to 20. I don't know. It was like about 10 years period. But anyways, it was eternalsounds.com, plural. That was my first website. Selling music.
And you didn't even have Luke's album on there.
Nope. We didn't have the distribution. So,
one thing that I want to just say real quickly on that aspect of discipleship, because I think that's why most churches fail, right? I mean, to be honest with you, churches fail because there's a lack of discipleship within the church. But in the industry, we see that. And, Doug did an interview with Pastor Bob Beeman, who was like the metal pastor to all those metal bands. I mean, when you look at, Luke, you were a young dude coming out when you were rapping, right? Here you are in front of the stages. I mean, you're trying to figure out your spiritual walk, and then you're placed in front of this opportunity to, be like a mentor to all the people who are listening and checking these out. And, that's the problem with all of these young people. We're throwing, young people, like, music is a young man's sport. It really is, right? I mean, you hit your peak, at this certain age of 18 to like 25. And then if you're a big artist, you've got a long career. If not, you've got that 7-8 year window. And how do you expect spiritual maturity to take place, especially when there's no pastors, there's no discipleship amongst the peers, and everybody's just trying to figure this out. You got the temptation of sex and drugs. I mean, look at Kevin Max's story, right? I mean, he's talking about how he was having sex with groupies and doing cocaine, all sorts of stuff, right? DC Talk years.
Luke just found out tonight.
Yeah.
He's like, so
what?
God is
Wait, what?
Yeah.
But look at Note of Herbs, though, right? You talked about Note of Herbs a lot, and he's a pastor today too. And so you look at a lot of these guys who had mentorship and discipleship, and big shout out to Note of Herbs and Petty D. They got their own new group out.
Petty D.
It's a Village King, and it's actually some old school hip hop sound. It's great.
Was he a grape tree?
No, he never actually wasn't on that name.
What label was he on?
He was on like a specifically. The only label that you'd probably know, he was on Beat Mart Records.
Yes.
Later on, I mean, his early stuff, his better stuff. I think that was like his own record. Yeah.
Wasn't he? Didn't T-Bone do his first 2 records?
You know what?
Talk to the Boney Soprano. I don't.
For the record, I love T-Bone.
Well, I will say,
I just
got
Petty D,
saved,
like
dude. It was
he-
like the first artist. It was literally the first artist. I just got saved, and I was just like a kid in the candy store.
Pettidee.
I'll be
all
pretty
right.
deep.
See, I'm trying to school you guys. He did do a song on a grape tree. I'm
Yes,
positive.
I'm sure. Well, he probably was on a grape tree.
Okay,
I don't think
because I remember I was like, I actually liked the song. Whatever song it was, I was like, this guy's dope.
hey, dude, I loved all the grape tree stuff. I don't care what anybody.
All of it? Are you serious, Doug? All of it?
New wine.
I'd say like 10% of it was like amazing, and 90% was junk. They just kept putting it out.
New wine was
New
so
wine was
good.
good. New one was good.
Bloody
And-
food.
Yeah, you know,
All I know is that when I went to GMA, those guys scared the pants.
it was Little
off
Rascal and New
every-
One. Those were the only guys that were top notch, but the rest was just
Little
like,
Rascal
oh my
was
god,
dope.
it
But
was.
yes.
It was really
Yes.
good. Yeah, but the rest of it, they were just
E-Rock.
pumping it out.
E-Rock and Rockstar and Rhymes Monumental and every other album that E-Rock ever put out. I don't know if I'm blowing his cover right now, but
E-Rock,
those
yeah.
albums were all great too.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
when
like-
you talk about E-Rock, he was Vanilla Ice's backup dancer. So.
Yeah.
Well, and he
Yeah.
was also the A&R guy for Rescue Records.
Dude, E-Rock was like the most diversified Christian hip hop person I'd ever met at the time. He had like 85 different groups and side projects and rap names, and yeah. So
And he's on all the he's on that first Sackcloth record album. He's
Yeah.
on Fashion Expo. He's on all that stuff.
dude,
so.
he was the homie, man. He was
But
cool.
I'm gonna say this about, you know, you're talking about Note of Verbs and like grits. I actually worked with those guys a lot, and those guys were straight up, you know, doing Bible studies and stuff like that. You know, actually being in the Word. Actually, I mean, praying for like an hour before they would go leave the hotel. I mean, Madge was always on them about it's being the Word. It's being the Word. It's being the Word.
I like it.
And they're
One of the best purchases I ever made at a record shop was I found the Mental Releases album on vinyl, and I just was like,
You didn't go to
Amazing.
bornagainsound.com then.
No, you know
Amazing.
what? That sold for like $50, man. I sold that one. I'm sorry. I should have sold.
vinyl.
You shouldn't have sold it. You should have given it to your friend Doug.
The Grits were the first hip hop group that came to Canada that actually preached from the stage. And I mean, we didn't get a lot of hip hop here in Canada as it was, unless you were in Vancouver or Toronto. So when you got it, it was kind of cool to see. But yeah, they were the first hip hop group that we saw that were preaching from the stage in between songs, and it was amazing to see.
Dude, I had them perform with Zayo.
Wow.
They played.
Was it
They,
mixed?
they,
Yeah.
they did a show. It was Dirt, Zayo, Grits, and
Jackie Velasquez.
Jackie Velasquez. And I'm trying to remember.
Oh yeah. Imperials. That's right. I remember that.
Yes, it was the
fourth
Imperials.
band you brought in. You
Have
the
you?
first
Do you
genre.
guys know? Do you guys know Il Seer?
Yeah.
He's a Canadian.
I know.
The Canadians don't apparently.
Yeah,
Oh man.
it was too underground for those guys.
Yeah.
go to
I
the-
See,
He's
they're,
like-
they're
he
the
was-
churchy. They're the churchy hip hoppers. They like
when I
worldwide
toured, the
message
one
guys.
time I toured Canada was with Elias. I don't know if you guys know Elias, but he was on one of my albums. He's dope. He's still doing music. Amazing singer, dope MC. He and I drove up to Canada and did a bunch of shows.
Where'd you go in Canada? Do you remember?
Well, I remember we're in Guelph.
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 Okay, you're Ontario.
Yeah, Toronto. Yeah, Toronto area.
Toronto area.
And we did this like underground. So Elias, I mean, if anybody in the Christian hip hop world, we have a similar philosophy of probably everything. Elias is the man. And so we were definitely going there, like trying to engage, trying to be missional. And Il Seer he's so dope. He's like one of the smart. He's got a PhD. He teaches at a seminary. He's a theologian. He's this super obscure underground poet MC. So we're doing all these shows, and I just remember we did the show in Guelph at this like a hippie underground like sandwich shop. And when we came back for the show to meet in the back green room, I've never seen that many drugs in my entire life on the counter. It was like, I mean, like every drug you could ever imagine ever. Like it was all there, just everywhere. And they're all like, yeah, go ahead. And it was Elias, myself, and Il Seer, and we're all like, we're straight. We didn't know we're straight edge. We don't do drugs, because no one there like knew we were Christian people. Apparently, it was really crazy. But yeah, Guelph, I'll never forget. Yeah, I've got some Cornerstone stories too. Moving on.
Well, let me show this real quick. Why do I keep doing that? I'm sorry. It's going to be an inlay. Here we go. I just want to show this. And this was just going back to GMA. This was Doug's. This was your showcase, Doug.
Right.
You guys can read that.
Nope.
Dirt, Frosty, John Rubin, Subculture Deviants.
Dude, Subculture Deviants were dope.
Born Again Sound needs to pick up the CDs that I have left from that.
Right. Yeah, there's a Third Nail Productions. MG.
Is that your penmanship, Doug? Is that your penmanship or what?
Yeah. No, that was. I don't even remember what program that was.
Oh, is that was
program? Like in
what year was that?
1999.
The Times New Romans.
Yeah. So that would have been a great show. You weren't around when when Syntax was promoting. I think you were already gone, Luke, when they were promoting their peanut butter and jelly show.
Yeah, I was out. I was outie.
Yeah, that and so many things were happening at that time, and you were out. You were out when so then the whole Red Cloud saga that went down to Syncat.
That was interesting to watch, though.
Right now, the one thing that I really kicked myself is on that Red Cloud diss track that he put out like immediately afterwards, and then removed. I never saved it. Right?
Who was he dissing?
Everybody. He was going after Tate. Homosexuality. He went after Jackie Velasquez on that thing. He went obviously all the Syntax guys. It was insane. It was.
I was kind of mad he didn't diss on me. I wanted to get.
That's when you throw out your diss track to him.
Yeah.
No, I like Red Cloud. That's the thing. I was always like, Red Cloud's dope. He's the dopest battle rapper out of everybody. I mean, that's a fact. I don't even dispute it.
He had nothing bad to say about you, so that's a good thing.
Dang it! That's because I no longer registered on his radar. But
he ain't making music no more. He's done. Yeah, he's done.
Yeah.
No, so is he really done?
No, I haven't seen him do anything.
Because I've kind of tried to stay following him. I mean, he had formed a group with some lady, Crystal lady.
Yeah, that's his wife. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. And then I had the album. It had some good stuff. I've followed his atheism rants on social media for a while and found them really not very good, though. That's one thing. Was like, stay in your lane, bro. Stay rapping. Don't talk about philosophy or theology. You're not good at it.
But see, that's where you could come in and talk about those things. I think that's a perfect segue into, so here you are, you did all of these things. You would have been on tour with the most people don't know that Extreme Days tour you're talking about. That's the movie, right? So if people don't know, that was a big movie.
Christian Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
Wait, was that for the movie, or was that what?
It was after the movie. So Sackcloth Fashion I think we had 2 songs on the Extreme Days soundtrack. I just remember we went to the movie, and we were at a movie theater in San Diego, like a real movie theater, and we're like watching this movie, and our music comes on, and I'm just like, I am famous. I'm gonna make millions, and that obviously did not happen. But so then I don't know. I don't even know if the Extreme Days tour was necessarily connected to the movie in any way, shape, or form, other than it was probably a big name. But I mean, at the time, it was like the who's who of Christian, artists that were on it. So, and it was like, I think I had dates. I was committed for like 9 months of shows. It was like, we have the next 9 months, and I think they were going to try to make it into a, Lollapalooza, or whatever. What was the other one? I just remember I saw Rage Against the Machine several times at this big festival that was going on at the time, and this was going to be like the Christian version of that.
Because I noticed I had Subculture Deviants on that tour.
Oh, I love them. I can't remember the dude's name. Oh, dude, the guy the good rapper,
Nathan Smart.
Yeah, Nathan Smart. Like, I don't agree with any of his theology. I'm pretty sure now because I'm friends with him on Facebook. Actually, I don't know if that's true.
I stopped talking to him.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's true, but yeah, dude, I thought he was like the funniest. He was just hilarious, fantastic. He's like, didn't he do stand-up comedy too for a while?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, I thought he was hilarious.
Him and John Rubin worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to either of them, but hey, that could be another show.
John Rubin's like a TV dude now, and John Rubens was pretty connected with the Vineyard in Columbus, Ohio, and moved out to the West Coast. From what I understand, I think it was with his brother, and they were doing a bunch of
super rich.
Yeah.
Well, his brother bought Goatee Records.
Yeah, as he should have.
So here you are. Let's take it back. Where are you at in with your wife and having kids at this point after you kind of left your musical career?
Yeah, so I leave when I have I'd been married for like maybe 2 years, and I had maybe 2.5 with that. And so I had a 1-year-old daughter, and that's where we were at. And then so my wife and I we have 5 children total, and they ranged from 9. So I have 3 daughters, are the oldest, 19, 17, 15, and then we have 2 sons, 12 and 8. And so we're not Catholic. Just want to be very clear. We're not Mormon. We're not Muslim. We haven't ever had anybody ask if we're Muslim, but lots of questions about us being Mormon or Catholic.
It's sad when it's such an anomaly to have big families now. Like everyone looks at you like you're a freak, and it's like God said, "Be fruitful, multiply."
Yeah.
It's like,
it's true. Yeah. So
I
anyway,
got 5 as well, dude. So right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's my future. It's like my future retirement plan. One of them is going to have to be a doctor or a lawyer. I'm playing the odds at least. That's the plan. But yeah, so we've had 5, but at that time, we just had 1. And I mean, it was funny. My wife and I actually, when we went on tour, we brought my oldest with us. So she was like 1. I was on the road. I was touring like nonstop for her first year. I mean, like, she learned how to walk when I was on the road, which, was terrible. That was one of the things that I was like, I don't know if I want to be a 45-year-old rapper. I'm not sure how long I'm going to want to do this with a family. But yeah, so she was on tour with us for, I think we went on tour with her for like maybe 3 weeks or something like that, which was really interesting. I mean, we'd be doing these shows, getting out of the show at like 2 a.m, and she'd still be wide awake, crying and freaking out. And then we'd go back to where we're staying. And then, she would sleep for maybe 3 hours and then wake up and be wide awake. And we were just destroyed. And yeah, touring is, I mean, that's the thing. I give it up for any artists that keep on doing it. It's tough to stay touring with family.
So did you go right into ministry at this point? At that point?
Yeah. So I had, at that time, I want to say I had like 3 years of my undergrad done. Cause I'd been going, like, I was doing school touring, just kind of doing school off and on. And then, so I had a year left. I want to say I had about a year left. And so I finished that, and we started working. I started working at for a ministry. It wasn't a church. It was just like a what do they call it? Parachurch ministry. I'm trying to remember that word. Parachurch ministry. I was teaching the Bible at different classes on Fridays and Saturday nights, and then working with a bunch of different churches. And then I started my MDiv, my seminary experience, and I think like 3 years later, I was pastoring a church. We had connected we developed a friendship with a friend who was pastoring a church, started helping him out at his church, and then he like left, and I was the only one there, and I got we became the pastor. It happened so quickly. It was kind of depressing because I had not wanted to be a pastor at the time. It would just happen, and it was like I discovered slowly over about 6 months that God was calling me to be a pastor, which like I went into it kicking and screaming, because I like still at that time I still had some significant reservations and problems with the church. I wanted to make a difference, but I also didn't ever want to, work for a church. But yeah, so so I pastored that church for 12 years. And then about 7.5, 8 years ago, something like that, I moved out to Northern California and have been pastoring at the Vineyard Church that I'm a pastor of now with my wife.
Wow. And so you're a full-time pastor, and then you're a part-time YouTuber then, right? So you run a
I'm a like very part-time, as in whenever I conveniently think about making a video, I'll do it. So I have a YouTube channel. And so it used to be just, Luke Geraty, was just under my name. And then, so backing up a little bit, when I was in grad school, I ended up writing my dissertation on the subject of sacramental theology. And so in the tradition I'm a part of, which would be like the Vineyard historically is an evangelical charismatic tradition. Those are our two influences. So like, back in the history of our movement, most of the time it was like a combination of like word and spirit, like conservative biblical theology with Holy Spirit practices, but like not Pentecostal, trying to root everything in a more biblical, I guess, model. So fast forward though, there's a lot of other traditions that are out there, and one of them being the liturgical sacramental traditions. And so, I mean, like Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, Anglicanism would be a huge influence for me. And so when I wrote my dissertation, I was exploring what it would look like to have a vineyard theology that was influenced by sacramental theology, because I think that our theology is sacramental. We just don't use that term, and most people have no idea what that means. So I started a podcast, I want to say 3 years ago, called The Sacramental Charismatic, which for people who know much about theology would initially think that those things are two mutually exclusive traditions, because sacramental people are generally really liturgical and,
Orthodox. Yeah.
And then the charismatic world is like, prophecy, healed in Jesus' name, craziness. So my kind of the start out was just, I was just doing podcasts and having a bunch of different theologians and scholars on from a variety of traditions. And I'm coming from a sacramental charismatic perspective. And then this season, one of my really close friends, who was actually a associate pastor, he worked at our church for a while after he graduated seminary, we started doing it together. So he's now my co-host, and we're kind of moving into the sacramental charismatic being like our thing, I guess, our brand or our perspective, because I believe that the sacramental charismatic position can save the church. I'll throw it out there.
Sorry, you believe that it can save the church? So when you're saying, you're referencing the church, so like obviously save Vineyard Church, you obviously think that they've kind of gone off?
I mean all churches.
Okay.
I think if all churches would become sacramental charismatic, it would significantly improve all of their bad nonsense.
So how is the sacrament balances
for $9.95? I can tell you exactly how. No, just kidding. No, I here's what I mean by that. So like if you look at the Western Church, I think that it would not take long to determine that discipleship is a significant problem within the church, right? I think, which then gets to two connecting topics would be like ecclesiology, so the doctrine of the church, like what is the church? What is the church's mission? What is the church supposed to be doing? It also gets to pneumatology, which is the study of the Holy Spirit. And so a lot of the nonsense in various traditions, like especially in the Pentecostal charismatic world, I think if they borrowed more and took more resources from the sacramental tapestry, they would be significantly reduce a lot of the nonsense. And then I think the sacramental world, while it has a lot of robust theological reflection, tends to minimize Christian experience and tends to be maybe not so great at being contextual or missiological. And so those two traditions, or those two corresponding theological resources, I think would help every church, because a lot of churches are actually sacramental. They just think that word means Catholic, so they avoid it. But then they avoid a whole bunch of really good things, in theology. And then the sacramental world, generally, like a lot of sacramental liturgical folks have no problem identifying the work of the Spirit in regard to like the liturgy, the reading of Scripture, praying litanies, the Eucharist. But it's like the Holy Spirit kind of stops in some spaces, and like there's not space for like teaching people to hear from the Holy Spirit and praying for healing or exercising spiritual gifts, things like that. So I'm kind of being tongue in cheek by saying it'll save the church, but I also kind of do think that those two traditions could really help each other out if they were more friendly with each other. The good news, I was just gonna say the good news is that this is now becoming really common amongst like Pentecostal scholars. Most of the leading Pentecostal scholars are definitely leaning into sacramental theology. A lot of the leading sacramental theologians are definitely being influenced by charismatic theologians. So it's kind of cool, just the way that the church is maturing in these regards.
How does the Vineyard hierarchy feel about that? Or do you secretly do it?
Well, I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, so the Vineyard is a weird thing. Like I would not say we have a hierarchy traditionally. I think there's going to become more of that because we're in this process of reorganizing and figuring out what the Vineyard is. But I think most Vineyard pastors now, like if most Christian or most Vineyard pastors that are under the age of 40, I will say, would have probably no problem at all with anything I just said. Because, like for instance, the Eucharist is kind of like my starting point. So the Eucharist, by that I mean communion, or the bread and the wine, the Lord's Supper. In a lot of Protestant evangelical churches, like it's not a significant feature, and like you might even not receive it more than once a month or once a quarter, or it might not ever happen. And that was probably the case with most Vineyard churches throughout the Vineyard's history. Now, I think overwhelmingly most of the new Vineyard church plants, or a lot of the younger pastors are leading their churches to receive it weekly, as should be. I'll just throw the gauntlet down. So yeah, I think that it's the sacramental charismatic approach is by far pretty common in a lot of Vineyard churches. And one example would be, the Vineyard's kind of historically known for praying for healing, like believing that the Holy Spirit does do supernatural, miraculous things. So if a sacrament is a really a basic definition would be it's a means of grace, or it's a sign pointing to a greater reality. It's a way to encounter God. Maybe it would be the way charismatic folks would look at it. Then our theology of healing is absolutely that, because we believe that through the laying on of hands, God can visit us and can bring healing to people. So like I've always argued, since I've been aware of these things, that we've been sacramental since our very beginning, because we've always seen spaces to encounter God's presence in ways of experiencing God's grace, which is a sacramental approach, or a sacramental theological view. We just didn't have the sophisticated language to be able to know what we were.
Chris, maybe you want to highlight Karen C's comment, because I think she lays it out, the 7 sacraments, just for people, because like myself included, I really didn't know what the 7 were. Would you agree with that as far as the sacramental, as far as the 7?
No.
What would you say then? I want to bring it up so you can actually say it.
I'm just being controversial. I'm trying to get clicks, bros. Okay, I'm trying to blow you up. No, so yeah, those are the Roman Catholic sacraments. So that's correct.
Okay. So
Yeah,
what would you change? What would you change or take out?
So I have no problem with those being sacramental. So I really like the word sacramental, and this is getting into the maybe a more robust theological aspect of it. But so I think there's a difference between like official church sacraments, meaning like Catholics would have the 7 listed here. Protestants historically would recognize 2 that almost no one disagrees with, although that some Protestants don't like the word sacrament. But baptism and communion would be the 2 that the all Protestants agree with. Some Protestants would add foot washing, for instance, the Brethren. Some of the discipleship churches add that. Others would add the preaching of the word, would be a sacrament. Word and spirit is a significant feature amongst many Protestant evangelical theologians. I think that all of those are fine. I think what I'm using the word sacramental in the sense of like there's sacramental spaces or sacramental experiences that happen. So I'd like to ask, like, are there other places where you can experience the presence and power of the Holy Spirit? And so in that regard, perhaps music would be a space where you can encounter God's grace. It's kind of like spiritual gifts, I guess. Like if you look at, there's about 5 different texts where Paul or Peter lay out a list of spiritual gifts, right? We all know Ephesians 4, we know 1 Peter chapter 4, we know 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and 1 Corinthians chapter 14, and then Romans chapter 12 are texts where Paul and Peter just lay out lists, so like the controversial ones: tongues, prophecy, healing, working of miracles, non-controversial things like teaching or administration or helps. So are those the only spiritual gifts that exist? I would say no. I think that those are not exhaustive lists. I think those are ad hoc. And so I think the same thing is true with sacraments, in the sense that the 2 that for sure no one disagrees on is the Eucharist or communion and water baptism. But I'd like to think that preaching can be sacramental. There's been times where I've heard sermons where I experienced God's grace and I encountered God.
Wouldn't you say all churches would like preach? Wouldn't there be a preacher to some extent? The majority of churches would already just take that for, they'd say,
I hope so.
Preaching. Yeah, well, for sure.
Yeah.
Be a strange church if they were preaching.
That's kind of my point, is that it's like we already have all these sacramental spaces. Why don't we just use that language, because that's what the church has used for 2,000 years.
Just so I'm clear, and again, like for me, when it comes to like secondary doctrine, like would you take these as like literal salvational type doctrine, or would you look, for example, you mentioned like you should be doing communion every single week. So for example, a church is doing it once a month, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And they take it very seriously. Are they in sin?
Definitely going to hell.
Right.
No.
Just wanted to clear it up. No, I'm just curious.
No,
like where you're
They do it bi-weekly, so we're on the cusp.
They're purgatory. They're in purgatory.
You're purgatory, exactly. I was going to say, you beat me to it. No, I'd say this. I think that I don't by any means think that these are salvation. Well, these are not salvation issues in the sense of, what is a church being unfaithful? No, I mean, part of it comes down to convictions. I will say I have I've probably coached or discussed the topic of weekly Eucharist with probably hundreds of pastors over the last 15 years. I don't think any of the arguments that people use that would cause them not to do it weekly are very good. I'll say that. I think that there's a long history through the church for literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years where the Eucharist was celebrated weekly. And yeah, Johnny, step it up. Geez, come on. But by no means do I think that it's something that like churches are being unfaithful. I just think it's actually more so if pastors and church leaders think through the being biblically faithful, and then also I think pastorally helpful. And missiologically, I mean, there's a lot of benefits.
Well, I would go so far as say a church is not participating in the Lord's Supper, communion, Eucharist, or whatever. I'd say they would be in sin, and I think they'd be in complete violation. So I'm saying, as far as the duration, that's where I'd be. But if there was a church out there that said we don't ever do it, I'd say it's absolutely incredibly wrong.
Well, the question is like, are you a church then?
Exactly. That's my point. I just wanted to see where you were at, how rigid, but like, at least you put your foot down and say, well, the church.
Let me ask a question there. So where does the because when we're talking about not being Catholicism, right, and the routine of these things, right, where does churches that do weekly communion, where does it just become passe, where it's just this common thing that is done, versus churches that hyper focus on repentance, right? Turning, really focusing on sin. I mean, the churches that I've always been a part of, it is a clear reminder, that this is why many of you are sick around here. This is something serious to take place on. I can see a church that is extremely serious about it, but oftentimes you go to these places, and the minute that the towels lift it, and here's the bread and the wine to come take, they're already standing in line to come get it. Have they done true reflection of the heart? Because that's the only thing that really truly matters in there. Where does that draw that line of, are we just doing it to do it, or are we actually really doing it?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things with that. I mean, that's true of anything that we do in the church, because oftentimes the argument is, we shouldn't, we don't want to receive communion too often because it'll minimize the importance or the value of it. But we sing every week, we pray every week, we read the Bible every week, we preach every week. We eat donuts and have coffee every week. And I surely hope that those things never, ever lose their value, because I love the donuts. Okay. So like the consistency, there's a lot of practices that we do every single week that we have somehow figured out a way to have meaning in them. But you can make the same argument about any of those things. Why do we pray the Lord's Prayer? Well, or, preach or anything. But that concern, I think it does have. So I don't think that's a good argument to not do it weekly, because we do lots of things weekly and as a regular rhythm or a habit that helps shape us to be more like Jesus. And but I do think that something we can learn from that concern or that question is that a lot of churches, when they do celebrate the Eucharist, it is done so poorly that it does not raise awe or wonder or worship. So I would like to suggest that, the answer is not, hey, let's stop doing it weekly. I think it's like, maybe if we spend more time thinking about how to lead communion, we would be better at it, and we could actually help draw the hearts of the church towards the beauty of Jesus's death on the cross and the significance for it. Because, to be an advocate for why. I mean, every single week that you receive communion, here's one amazing thing, is that every single time we receive communion in our church, it's an opportunity to share the gospel, right? Because the Eucharist is a gospel-centric practice that's reminding us of the death of Jesus and why he died for us. But one thing I'd say, probably one difference that I would have based on a little bit of what you said there, Chris, is I hold to an open table. Meaning I like our church. I think that the table can be used for evangelistic missional purposes, which has a lot of merits to it. Meaning, like on Sunday mornings, we will say things like, hey, we're about to receive communion together. We're going to celebrate the Eucharist. This is a meal that Jesus left for us. It's not my table. It's Jesus's table. And Jesus demonstrated through the Gospels time and time again that he would eat meals with broken people who were disenfranchised, who were on the outskirts of society. And he had those meals to have them experience grace. And so if you're here this morning and you're a follower of Jesus, then you know that this is our meal. This is what the family of God does and has been doing for thousands of years. But if you're here this morning and you have not made a decision to follow Jesus, then this might be the first decision that you make, the first step in becoming a follower of Jesus. So we would welcome people to the table, which is a little bit different than a lot of like Presbyterians, super Reformed, Baptistic folks who hold a closed table, which, you know, like some Baptists won't allow other Baptists to receive communion.
There's even fenced. Yeah, there's fenced, there's closed, there's open. Yeah,
Yep.
So it's an interesting debate.
Yeah.
You're
muted, Mike. Or Chris. You're muted, Mike.
Mike, Chris, you're muted.
Yeah. I was just saying it's an aspect of the circumcised heart. It's for those with that circumcised heart. So
I gotta ask a real quick question because I'm really curious. You brought it up. Does your church do foot washing?
Heck no.
And if not, why not?
That's gross.
So basically, but what's the justification? I'm just curious in a nutshell.
I would not have a problem with foot washing. I don't think that I am not convinced that Jesus instituted foot washing as a sacrament at all in the Gospels. Okay. I do think, though, also too, I mean, this is where our hermeneutics plays a part. I think is that it's a cultural thing in the first century, because obviously Jesus is demonstrating servanthood and humility in that passage. So I think the question would be, how can we do that today? Like, what would be a way for us to demonstrate sacrificial service and humility? We have done, will say one church that I was a part of, we did a foot washing service, which was pretty cool. So we explained it. We made it clear that this is not like a commandment. You know, you don't have to do this. Yeah. And we had foot washing as a thing. Like we had the little, thing. And then we had these towels, and we said something like, you know, if you're here and maybe you're not necessarily wanting to wash somebody's foot, but you want somebody to understand the symbolism behind that, we have these towels here and you can go ahead and grab. It was a reconciliation service.
Doesn't Jesus go so far to say you should do the same? Like in that verse, when it comes to foot washing, like it's a very problematic verse for churches just to dismiss and say, "Oh, that was first century."
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's problematic at all. I think that's the whole point, is that the whole again. So does Jesus indicate or mean that you have to wash other people's feet, or is he indicating that you should become a servant? I think that the bulk of the texts, and I mean most exegetes that I've read seem to lean that way. That's why there's only really one tradition that has ever, landed on it as being a sacrament, which I would, just to clarify, I can see it being sacramental, in the sense of like, I think it could be a means of experiencing grace. Yeah. And by no means is it bad. But so this gets to our mission, to a contextualization missional perspective, is that if it's done in a way that people can understand, and it doesn't necessarily like weird out the community, because I think a lot of times I've been to foot washing services, they're just so religious and churchy. There's no significance. There's no explanation. So the service that I was a part of that did this, I thought they did a really good job, because it was explained well, and it wasn't, no one walked away feeling like if they didn't do this, they were, disobedient. So yeah, but I would not place foot washing in the same category as the Eucharist.
No, I would definitely agree with that, but I just find it very interesting how it's just really quickly dismissed, where it deserves further, look at it, because it is, pretty clear when he says do the same, right? And again, you could take it as like, do something in servanthood of other people, right? But then we could go that way when it comes to head coverings. I think that's a really compelling case. And again, I'm not legalistic in the sense saying you have to or else, but you start looking at it, I think there's more than just, oh, it was back in the day. Oh, the Jews did it. Like, you hear a lot of argumentation sometimes, and I think you got to be careful.
But with the head covering thing, yeah, I mean, there's more to that, because that gets into the question about women in ministry.
Well, gets into creation, everything. It says if you get into it, it's got like it's got four.
You got to be for it because your wife is in it.
It's really profound.
I am definitely pro. I'm an egalitarian for sure, but I mean, I was going to say it's not. I think it's more than that. The Greek word, whether it means head or source, is the big debate. And I mean, I'm.
Oh, so you lean more towards like head coverings, like for women, or
no, not at all.
Okay, because you're opposite. So basically, you're kind of like you're holding on to. Like, it's just interesting how you're very modern in this kind of way, but also you're holding on to this orthodoxy. It's very, very strange.
You know what that's called, Robbie? That's called the kingdom.
Well, like I said, I just think it's interesting is all.
Well, hey guys, we've got 5 minutes left on tonight's episode. So I guess what we'll do here, I'm going to share real quickly here. We'll put this back up there. This is where you can find all of Luke's videos with his co-host. They're all up there on that YouTube channel. So, wow, a lot of stuff to digest over there. And then obviously, if you're in his area, you can go to that church. But I promised Luke I was going to do something today, and he was going to cringe. And so we're going to say the last few minutes because I don't think any of these guys have seen it. Luke probably hasn't watched this in probably a long time. So we're gonna react because that's hip and trendy. So we're gonna do a live reaction with Luke Geraty, with the artist. We're gonna take it back. So this episode, guys, it was super fun. We went from rapper to deep theologian. Luke is not just a borderline, hey, I'm just a pastor. He is extremely deep. So you go from, so here we go. We're going to bring this up. And so I think it's a fascinating journey, fascinating story. We're hopefully going to do a lot more interviews like this. I know, Doug, you've got Jamie Rowe of Guardian lined up. You were supposed to do that last week. So that's probably coming soon too, right, Doug?
Yeah. Stuff got in the way with my job. So I have rescheduled.
So yeah, we got some interviews coming up in there. The goal is to get Plato to come in as well eventually. So I'm gonna share this one. We're gonna react. I think Luke, this might be your only solo video that you've ever done.
Oh Lord!
So here we go. This is like super old. This isn't like Pandemonium when you were like at the top. This is some low budget production. Here we go. This is
not recorded on an iPhone.
Well, I don't even think iPhones were around back then. So this is
a joke, Chris.
Yeah, here we go. This might have been recorded on
flip phone.
A flip phone, no doubt about it. Here we go.
There we go.
Polaroid.
I spend my days navigating throughout this land, treading on a product crafted by your hand, distracted by the latest in fashion and brand, excuses of my awfully short attention span.
Yo, I'm traveling all across the globe. My brain's unraveling to the inner depths of my soul. I take control and stroll on sidewalks and city blocks, looking for a place to call my home. I'm on my own. I roll from time zone to time zone in the conquest. Complex execs to just my best, they blessed. Yo, who's the best of them? As I'm tossed with the rest of them, I keep on stressing them, cause I'm always stretching them. My mind's residence is evidence when it says no offense, thoughts being caught. Yo, I thought it was in third person, rehearsing the need for cursing. I found the need for churching, although my heart is still hurting. I'm yearning for a change like $4 and 10 dimes. I'm at the point the man's last crime rhymes rip off my lips from state to state. Wait, I rest the pause, trust as my king navigates the backseat passenger who's asking Christ for the keys. Discussing that you trusted by MC in degrees. My mind spits, hits and switch to fits. The raging day is gray shades, turn light pages into a stinking maze. With rays of sunshine, I shine sun rays on earth. The universe is mine.
I spend my days navigating throughout this land, trekking on a product crafted by your hand, distracted by the latest in fashion.
What year is this, Luke?
Fashion Expo. So 99?
99, wow.
I just want to know why Syntax did every video in this grainy brown.
Yo, I'm resting upon the fact that my daughter's my back. Get stacks of handicaps, keep attacking. Rapping
You can actually play this song without a copyright strike, Chris.
Along the sides of death, my breath is righteous. I might just force myself to take more action.
You're gonna have Steve to go on your front door tomorrow.
In these man's given for living is a sin. If your sin is found in living, I find myself torn between the gravitation found in two life sides. Must be picked, I can't stick with one mask. I feel past as an outcast. My days are always late. Hate is in my heart, forcing me to seek out freedom. Leave them whack cats with gangster raps and gas and pop daddy tracks. They can't get hand claps and pets on back. They are deceived the same way Adam was. Tricked by Eve, so I leave. Draw my pimp lip that gets me digits. And you can bet that last line will draw out my critics that don't get it. When it comes to understanding, demanding me to gangbang. Yeah, right.
I spend my days navigating throughout this land, trekking on a product crafted by your hand, distracted by the latest in fashion and brand, excuses of
Whose house is this?
my awfully short attention.
This is at Trudeau's house. Him. Was dad.
Okay, I trade my body straight, lonely and confused. I sit and contemplation like it's in a Rubik Cube. I've been diffused, answers come aggressively on the most heavenly host post. They're all
At least you
affecting me,
guys
you might as well be
clean,
sweating me since my job owner's a vessel. Even though mics are made accessible, your gibberish is spewed with great competition rhythm. The average listener wonders why you're still spit. You might be ripping shit and sentences repetitive.
They're like all clean
Let it
shaven
live,
too.
give till I pray, and slowly sway and lose my own temper like I'm Bobby Boucher. Way down from bounce, South Connect with more checks than hockey. I find myself dope, yet they find me cocky. Underestimated, a devastated sound sets and wreck show after show. Flow after flow, my tongue's home with gold plaques and clothes and bones, strokes of codes that you get when you upload.
How old that computer
The high
is.
road is often harder when flexed. Without relaxation, I
Floppy
know
disk.
you get vexed. Next, I call my nerve, but first must travel on. Babylon is to my back, so I travel on.
So was that? So how long was your
Keep
hair at
cruising.
that point?
It was not long. So really quick, you guys remember Coleon? Do you guys know Coleon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Coleon's album was out, and he was like gonna have the single because back in that day, you would like send out this big old, I don't know what kind of it was a VHS type of thing, but not VHS, and it would have like the the video for your primary single, and then you'd have a middle one, and then you'd have a last one. Well, Coleon was number one, and then I think Green Olive Tree, which is this rock band, was going to be number two, and then they just needed a third one. And Tim and I were just like, "Hey, let's just make a funny video because obviously no one will watch it and it'll be a joke." And we made that, and then the worst part is that when they made the copies, they put my song first, and then they put Green Olive Tree, and then Coleon was last. And so like that song, I mean that album or that video ended up being on like BET and MTV2. It got like played on some of the. It was totally a joke. Like that's why I had fans in the car making it like we were fake driving, and I wore a wig and ate cereal. It was just like dumb. We were just screwing around.
Yeah, but Sir
sorry,
Sir Rock's beats, they were dope back then. So yeah, I mean the production for that time was pretty awesome. And so yeah, video obviously could have been better. But even Red Cloud's stuff, even Dirt's stuff was exactly like that too.
Well, that's what I said. Every synth
They're terrible.
was like a grainy brown or green.
Because
I
you
don't even know who
can
edited
hide
that.
you can hide doing that by putting like different tints on film. You can make it look cooler and like it's kind of
I don't. That last part about making it look cool, I don't know about that.
well, if you took that video, took that tint off, it would look a lot more amateurish. It was almost like watching Christian movies back in the early 90s.
Oh, that was the goal.
That
was the funny part is that we were going. I was literally going for that to make fun of it because I did not think it would actually go out there.
That's awesome.
And years later, here we are making fun of it.
Yeah.
So bad.
Hey, I
cool,
thought the song was
yeah.
great. It was one of the best songs on
Thank
the
you.
Fashion Expo record. But it's got that Fashion Expo record had so many people on it. I try to tell these guys to go back and look at it.
It was so good. Yeah, and that I will say the one cool thing, that song did really, really well. That's pretty much that was like my song, that did well on the radio and things. And so I got lots of shows off of that. The video, oops.
When was the last time you watched it?
20 years ago when it came out, or 20, whatever. I mean,
Has your wife seen it?
The reason why there's so many views on it is because he watches it weekly.
The kids
are there actual views? That's embarrassing if there are.
Yeah, that was
10.
Oh no, there's quite a bit of views on that. Let me look that up. And
Just
your kids haven't seen that?
My kids?
Yeah.
They probably have to make fun of me. But
that's awesome.
Do they? Yeah, that's got 14,000 views.
Wow,
that's a lot.
Yeah. You've watched it a lot over the years, Luke.
Every day I play at least one time. So yeah,
he's like refreshing.
Yeah,
what are you doing, honey? Nothing. Just refreshing the page.
Well, the what Syntax had wrote in here, a very young Luke Geraty was spending the night at Sir Rock's home, or actually his parents' house, and they started filming a music video as a joke. Since no one else was home, some of the footage started to look pretty good. So they went ahead and sent it out to the video shows and got some serious airplay. The video, which started out as a joke, is still played on many shows around the country. Either way, we can all agree it was a good time.
I really quickly, when I was in Kenya like 10 years ago, I was over there doing I was teaching at a seminary, and then I ended up we actually made a couple rap songs and did a couple videos there. But I was in my hotel eating breakfast, and there had this Christian rap show on, and that video came on, and I was like, what is going on in this world?
So how much of your congregation actually knows of your hip hop roots?
None, I hope. Well, actually, I think a lot of people probably do, because my wife, I think, gets a lot of joy out of, oh, would you like a CD? You can listen to his old music. Yeah, she's like, he used to be a rapper. So
well, there's a place that buys up a lot of old CDs. It's called Born Again Sound. Actually, you know what? Anytime I get a Luke Geraty record in the store, it's gone pretty much instantaneously. So
Luke, you need to get up on a Sunday and just have a backpack on, your hat backwards, and just start rocking it.
I wear this every Sunday. I do wear hats. I'm not opposed to it.
Well,
backwards?
Yeah.
Then do it, man. Just bust it out, man. Just completely
get the backpack.
They're not ready.
Actually, we're going to give you this opportunity, Luke. I'll put you on. If you have any of your writtens prepared, you could give us 8 or 12.
I want to see Johnny and Luke go back to a battle rap.
I mean,
Johnny's a battle rapper?
I mean, if you could spit 32 bars for us, that would be wonderful.
He can spit bars. Oh, Johnny can spit bars. Oh, yeah, don't ever.
Johnny, come on, you've been so quiet tonight. Just drop some bars.
No.
No.
I know you guys are treating us like we're like dancing monkeys. Okay,
well,
we're not.
Doug,
we have
dancing
souls.
monkey.
Doug,
we have souls.
What hip hop group were you in for a little bit?
I wasn't in a hip hop.
Well, you kind of danced with them, right?
What?
Back in the day, you told me this story, dude. So don't.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Just pulls these things just from out of nowhere.
No,
I'll do half of a verse that I can remember. Okay. I'll try my best. This is from the latest song I've recorded 15 years ago. Okay. Here we go. I sentence shadows to light despite the sound. Wait, that's not how it goes. I sentence shadows to light despite the sound. Something, something, something. So profound. Something. Yeah, I don't remember it.
Come on, Robbie.
So go to LukeGeraty.com.
Totally kidding. Totally kidding.
Robbie was a dancer.
Bandcamp.com, right? So.
Actually, I think it was like, yo, 6'2". Dude, I mean, these are like the songs from my album. I don't remember any of them.
Apparently, artists on Bandcamp are just completely getting canceled. Like they're going to log into their account and it's gone.
Oh,
completely.
I did. I actually, I got copyrighted by Syntax because apparently I don't own my own album.
Oh wow!
You don't own your album?
No, they own the rights, right?
I'm assuming. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just made rap.
If they're copyright striking you, they own the rights to it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I had it up there for like 15 years, just giving it away.
It's a great feeling, eh? When all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, I want to listen to my music." Nope, sorry, we don't allowing it today. Yeah.
Well, hey, guys, we're a little bit past time. Luke, thank you so much for doing this. I know we've been trying to do this for a few weeks. Awesome. This was absolutely a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you kept us all in check. So, Luke, why don't you, tell everybody again where they can find you? Maybe if they're in the local area, they can come to your church and they can get sacramental charismatic each week. So why don't you tell them a little bit about?
Well, if you, so I have you go to my YouTube, just search for Sacramental Charismatic, and I've got a podcast, the Sacramental Charismatic, and there's also videos on other things theology related there. I'm on Instagram at Luke Geraty. I also have a fly fishing Instagram, which we've been communicating through because I fly fish a lot and do that, which is NorCal Trout Bum. And then I'm on Twitter. I tweet fairly regularly about theology and random things, and Pharoah Monch and wanting more Pharoah Monch albums, and Chino XL Pharoah Monch collabs, and John Rubin and Doug doing breakdancing videos, things like that. I don't know.
That would be interesting.
I would pay for it. Like a whole $1.50.
Actually, John and Doug don't get along, so.
Oh my gosh, Chris.
You brought him up. It got awkward.
Yeah. Doug and Toby Mac have issues. KJ52.
Look. The late 90s and early 2000s were a sore time. Lots of money lost on people.
Yeah.
Listen, bro, it's all about the ministry. You just need to give up that money for the kingdom, bro.
Oh,
okay.
I gave it up a long time ago.
Bro, you just need to let it go, bro. You just should let me have all the rights to all of the music, bro. It's for
Get into
Jesus,
cryptocurrency,
bro.
Doug.
Yeah, I think. Wait a minute. That's what John Rubin said to me.
Hey, I've heard it all. Just so you know.
So that is a goal to get John Rubin to come on, Doug. That we got to figure that out. So
me and John don't have an issue with each other.
I know.
You know that, right?
I do.
He's been on my podcast.
Has he?
And Crumb.
Okay. Well, hey, Johnny, why don't you tell everybody where they can go and find what you do every single week? Because you do some awesome stuff too, and maybe you can get Luke to come on.
I'd love to get Luke. I'm trying to get Dougie Fresh on there too.
Dude, I texted you.
What do you do?
I know you did.
Tell me what you do. I like you.
Oh, thank you.
You seem cool.
Appreciate you so much. Robbie's been on it too. Chris has declined me many times. So
you have never asked me, but go ahead. Tell everybody.
At Why Me Project and faithstrongtoday.com. You can hear mine and Holly's podcast each and every week. And this week we have Super Bowl champion Jordan Norwood from the Denver Broncos, which comes out tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
Sweet.
Yeah, he's had Mark Wahlberg.
Kevin Sorbo.
He's had but music wise, he's had everyone.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
But not.
And we only have like 5 followers.
It's not true. It's not true.
Wahlberg.
It's not true at all. Yeah, he had Mark Wahlberg about 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Dude,
before his movie came out.
I like him. He's Roman Catholic. He's sacramental.
He is sacramental. He is.
I like him.
Would that be considered heretical sacramental?
No, I'm friendly to the Roman Catholic tradition. I am not Roman Catholic. I am not Pope loving, Catholic, but I respect the tradition. I think there's lots of Catholics who are born again, and I'm not adversarial with them. I like to engage them and discuss theology with them. But I got plenty of Catholics that go to our church that are no longer Catholic, so I have to like them all.
Yeah. So yeah, why don't you guys connect after we get off here? Maybe connect contact info. Robbie, where can people find you?
You can find me at Celebrate Truth on all social media platforms, YouTube primarily.
Oh, that would be some theological battle between Robbie and Celebrate, or Luke versus Celebrate Truth.
My wife is commenting on this show right now. Delete this show right now. Apparently my kids and their friends watch my raps.
Hey, kids and their friends watch it.
Nice.
I would. You know what?
I would use that as currency.
Yeah, earlier I was saying that I believe that women should serve and can serve in the church. I've changed that opinion now. I think that women should not be allowed to talk.
Don, we'll send you this on video. We will record this and send it to you.
I'll do some intros for you, extras, whatever you need. Last thing before we're done, I just want to say if anybody wants to wash my feet, I'm a fun guy.
So creepy. What a way to end this. Just absolutely, completely. Just
Johnny's been quiet.
The whole vibe is gone. No, he's quiet. What does he do? Throws in the feet washing. Boom, right at the end. No thanks. No thanks.
It was like a terrible dad joke.
Luke's already told us. You don't have to do it. It's done. No, that was just.
I didn't say you don't have to do it.
It's symbolism. You can do it or you can't do it. We're not doing it.
It's called hermeneutics, bro. Hermeneutics.
Robbie is 6'7". If you didn't know, he has a hard time washing his feet.
I do. I
can't read somewhere.
Robbie needs binoculars to see his feet.
But Robbie's also sort of Baptist, so he makes his wife do it. So it's.
I like a Reformed Baptist. That's kind of my leaning.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, where he gets his
Mm-hmm.
where he has full control over his wife, so she washes his feet for him.
Yeah.
So
through the words of Calvin,
I use a super soaker.
Not really. I wouldn't say so much.
This show has gone off the rails.
Really
so if
has
you want to answer that question before we go off, where do you trout fish in North Carolina?
So I fish a lot on the lower Sacramento River, the Trinity River, the upper Sacramento River, the McCloud River, all over. I'm like, we live in Calabama, so it's California, but it's actually like Northern California is a completely different thing than the rest of California.
It's not like Southern Gomorrah in the south, right?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, but sure.
California's getting pretty bad, but then again, we're in Canada, so we don't have much to say.
We're not that. I can say.
No, I know you're northern, right? I mean, Northern California is totally different than South. Yeah,
totally different.
Depends on
I agree.
what part of Northern California, San Francisco.
I call Southern. That's Southern.
San Francisco is not Northern California, sir. That is Central California. Okay.
So I think what we're gonna do, if you'll ever come back on, we'll have you on and Dirt come on.
Yes, let's get Dirt on. Yeah,
I tried to get Jeremy on tonight. We
got to get Dirt and Luke.
He doesn't want the smoke.
No, he does.
Dirt don't want the smoke.
Oh, he'll love it.
He said Luke doesn't like me.
Whatever. I still like Dirt. I've always liked Dirt. Tell Dirt he's one of my best friends.
I will tell him that.
It's just been 25 years, but we're very close.
All right. Well, Doug, thank you so much. You don't have anywhere for people to go, but hey, guys, you can follow us, Take on the World TV. We got lots of different programming here. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Again, I want to just really quickly just mention, if you guys want to give to Amber Plaster, you guys can go to givesendgo.com.
Yes.
Amber Plaster. She could use your help. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. You have been watching Sound Off with our special guests, Luke Geraty, Johnny Rocket, Robbie Davidson, and Kirshner, to Josh and Elijah that aren't here tonight. We miss you guys. We'll see you guys soon. Everybody, take care. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care.
Love you.
See ya.
The breath in my lungs just can't hold me. No man. Start a revolution with no man control. I'm gonna sound off. Start a revolution with the breath in my lungs. Sound off.